Thanks so much, Shannon. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the hireimmigrants.ca webinar, Professional Immigrant Networks, Connecting with Immigrant Talent. Today we're going to be talking about Professional Immigrant Network groups, what they are and what they offer to Canadian employers. This webinar is hosted by hireimmigrants.ca and the Allies team, which stands for Assisting Local Leaders with Immigrant Employment Strategies. Allies provides funding, technical assistance, and leverages corporate connections to assist local initiatives in bringing down the barriers that skilled immigrants face when seeking employment. So I want to say good afternoon to the East Coast and good morning to the West Coast. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Suzanne Hoffberg, an officer with HRSDC's Racism-Free Workplace Strategy, and I will be moderating today's webinar. Joining us today is Raquel Sevilla from the Toronto Region Immigrant Employment Council, or TRIEC. Raquel, would you be able to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks, Suzanne, and greetings, everybody. I'm the Manager of Program Development at TRIEC, and I'm also the staff lead for the Professional Immigrant Networks initiative, also known as PINS. So I'm really glad to have the opportunity to participate in this webinar and to talk a little bit about our network of immigrant networks, as well as share some practical ways for employers and networks to work together.
Thank you, Raquel. We also have Deanna Matsanki from Scotiabank. Deanna, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Good morning, everyone. Bonjour to anyone who's here or listening in from Quebec. I am part of the team for our Global Employment Strategies group for Scotiabank, and specifically I manage our diversity and inclusion portfolio and our policy and compliance portfolio, and we are a sponsor for PINS. And the main reason is that it really just makes a great lot of business sense to us, both from a customer perspective and from an employment perspective. So PINS is really one of the first things we've seen come along that really made a lot of sense for a lot of people. So we're really pleased to be involved and to be able to sponsor the project.
Thanks so much, Deanna. We also have Daniel Chioriano from the Association of Romanian Engineers in Canada, or ERIC. Daniel, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and about ERIC? Hello, do we have Daniel on the line?
I think Daniel may have accidentally been muted. So let's just go on for now, and we'll have Daniel come back in and join us once it's his turn to speak.
Not a problem. Okay, well, I do want to thank and welcome everyone. Just some housekeeping notes, a few notes on the webinar technology for our callers before we get started. Everyone has been muted to minimize background noise and feedback, and we do welcome any questions that you have during the course of the webinar. What you can do is you can type them into the chat field found at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, and your questions will be answered during the Q&A portion at the end of the webinar. As with previous hireimmigrants.ca webinars, this presentation will be posted online in about a week's time for those who are unable to join us today, or if you'd like to review or share any part of the presentation. Over the next hour, we're going to set the stage in terms of the need and value of a diverse workforce and employers' challenges in knowing where to find skilled immigrant talent. We're then going to delve into what a professional immigrant network is and provide concrete examples of how employers can work with them from the perspective of both a large employer and the leader of professional immigrant networks who has also worked with small and medium-sized organizations. The last 20 minutes, we're going to be dedicating that to a question and answer period. So any questions that aren't addressed during the webinar will be answered at that time. Okay, so let's just get started. I do want to start with a little bit of information about the Racism-Free Workplace Strategy. The Racism-Free Workplace Strategy, or Rufus RSWS, is very excited to be partnering with TRIEC on this session and to provide you with some context on its value to the work that we do. I just want to provide a brief background on what this strategy is itself. Rufus is a part of the Canada Action Plan Against Racism and specifically targets improvement in the area of employment for members of visible minority and Aboriginal communities. There are 6 racism prevention officers across the country, each representing every province and territory, and each providing a number of services to employers as well as networking opportunities. Resources that range from 1- and 2-hour video series, lunch and learn seminars, to full-day interactive workshops on race, inclusion, and the workplace, which the Federal Labor Program offers all free of charge. Regional partnerships are another initiative that we're involved in, and these partnerships are with local organizations that support anti-racism and anti-discrimination in the workplace. We also have national partnerships with organizations such as TRIAC, whose films are included in our suite of products and who work directly with many of our clients and community networks regarding the improved and sustained employment of professional immigrant network groups, of which visible minority communities are comprised approximately 75%. So in doing some reading around our topic today, I came across a quotation drawn from the Conference Board of Canada's website on the intrinsic value of immigrant talent to the development of Canada's economic landscape. I'd just like to read this quotation as I think it pertains greatly to the context of what we're about to delve into today. And it reads, "Canadians tend to see immigration as an issue for the federal government to handle, but the worldwide war for talent requires a wholesale change of attitude, one that brings action on immigration into corporate offices, large and small. When business leaders and managers provide opportunities for immigrants to improve processes and create new products and services, they can grow their businesses. For this reason, immigration as a corporate issue goes far beyond the job-filling portfolio of human resources managers as a matter of core business development." I think that for most of us attending today, we understand this call to action. It's part of the reason that we're here this afternoon, and hopefully a part of what spurred us on in our curiosity about the PINS program as a whole. What resources are available, and how can we take advantage of this shifting demographic trend? In 2006, Canada welcomed 251,511 immigrants, most of them highly skilled, through its doors. Almost 70% of these immigrants landed in Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver, the urban engines of our economy, with Toronto alone accounting for about 39% of that total. Yet there's still a pressing need for immigration. In 2011, Canada welcomed 280,000 immigrants, and the latest census data shows immigrants accounted for 67% of population growth between 2006 to 2011. Statistics Canada predicts they will account for 80% of the population growth by 2031. The Conference Board of Canada estimates that we will need 375,000 new immigrants annually in order to stabilize the workforce and ensure economic growth. Finding and attracting this talent is the first challenge facing this country. A second major challenge is improving Canada's record in recent years at matching immigrants with the jobs that their skills warrant. Professional immigrant networks are a source of skilled immigrant talent for employers in helping them to meet business and organizational needs. Raquel, I'm going to turn it over to you for a bit. Can you tell us a little bit more, please, about the Professional Immigrant Networks and TRIAC's newest project?
Absolutely. Thanks, Suzanne. So TRIAC has been working with Professional Immigrant Networks as well as our partners to build a network of networks that creates opportunities for immigrants to connect to meaningful employment. So when we say Professional Immigrant Networks, what do we mean? So these are immigrant-led, member-based, and volunteer-run associations that may have a number of objectives, one of which is a focus in helping assist their members connect to the right jobs. So they do this in a number of ways and through various activities such as networking events. They do it through mentoring programs, workshops, speaker events, and training. So in 2009, we conducted an environmental scan to learn more about these networks, and we found 70, so that's 70 active networks operating in Ontario, mostly in the GTA. And amongst them, they have a collective reach of over 30,000 recent as well as established immigrants across a wide range of sectors and ethno-specific groups. So examples of these would be the Canadian Colombian Professionals Association or the International Doctors Network. So we learned that the network leaders wanted to collaborate and learn from each other, and that TRIAC stakeholders, such as employers, wanted to connect with the networks in a coordinated way. So thanks to support from Citizenship and Immigration Canada as well as Scotiabank, we were able to launch the initiative, which we call PINS. So PINS is both an online community as well as a program of strategic initiatives that aims to strengthen the networks, that aims to link them together in a learning community, and also builds connections between the networks and key partners. So those are the employers, professional associations, service providers, government, and so on. So now, while TRIAC's work to date has involved immigrant networks in Toronto, because that's our scope of work, we are also laying the groundwork to involve networks from other communities across Canada. So through funding from allies, our counterpart immigrant employment councils in Kitchener-Waterloo, in Ottawa, London, Middlesex, Calgary, as well as Halifax, have conducted environmental scans of the networks in their regions. And the networks that we are finding are incredibly diverse in terms of their professionals and ethnocultural groups. So for example, in Waterloo, they found a network called the Professional Performing Immigrant Artists, which offers networking opportunities and to new immigrants wanting to work in the arts. So they also are active at helping their members find employment and provide mentoring opportunities to connect them to their field. So we are really excited and look forward to collaborating with these immigrant employment councils and the networks from other communities in Canada, and we hope to see this starting happen this year. So how do employers benefit? Employers, I think, can realize a number of benefits by working with professional immigrant networks. And I think the number one reason why employers have expressed interest in connecting with us and the networks is mainly to tap into the networks to connect to talent. And we talk about talent of these networks, we're talking about immigrants that are recent immigrants, those who are established, have been here for many years, and even prospective immigrants. So some of the networks we work with have immigrants that are in the final stages of immigration making their way towards Canada. So the employers that we work with recognize that this is a niche talent source that's potentially untapped by their competitors. It also gives them access to international business experience, cultural insights, as well as language capabilities. And it's also a great way to be able to enhance their current recruitment practices and meet some of their diversity mandates. The second benefit is that it's also a great way to be able to raise awareness of the organization as an employer of choice, and I'll talk more about that in the later slides. The third piece is if employers involve their staff in engaging these networks, it's a great way to develop cross-cultural understanding of their employees, and this in turn I think really enhances vendor-client as well as employee relations, and which we know is increasingly important in a globalized economy. And then the last benefit, I think, is it's a great way to be able to build communication pipelines to communities that are relevant to your business. We know that more and more immigrants are arriving in Canada. We heard the stats. And we also know that the market is changing significantly. All we need to do in Toronto is just look around and you see that the changes are happening. So how does engagement work from an employer's perspective? So the first is, if you're an employer that's hiring, I think the most concrete way is by circulating those job postings. And you can do that in a couple of ways. So one, for example, is by posting jobs with individual networks and partnering with one or two or a few that make sense to you. Or you can also connect with multiple groups using our newly launched PINS website. So we'll start with the first one. So establishing a relationship with an immigrant network in your sector. So we recently launched the PINS website, which houses a directory of these networks, and we'll share the link with the live link with you later. The website is a great tool that'll allow you to search by profession or by ethnocultural group, which is especially helpful if you're looking for language skills or if you do business with particular countries. So this is the first place I think that I would suggest you go and look. And if the networks that you want to partner with are not there, a great way to find them is also through word of mouth. Some of these are also online, so look not only at websites, but also on social media platforms like LinkedIn. And then once you find them, you can establish a relationship with the network leaders and then request to send your job postings through their communications mechanisms. So many of them have websites, others use social media, and then of course there's good old email. So I'll give you a concrete example of how one employer worked with a network. So we introduced Robert Half with ASCA, so that's the Association of Filipino-Canadian Accountants. So we introduced them a few years back. Now, Robert Half regularly provides workshops for the ASCA members on resume preparation as well as employment tips. And the benefit to Robert Half is that they now have a pipeline of talent to meet their clients' needs, and successful placements have been made as a result of that. Now, the benefit to the ASCA members is that it's an opportunity for them to meet the recruiter and to enhance their employment skills. So even if they don't get the job, at least they're one step closer to becoming employed in that job that they really want. So TRIAC's PINS initiative also provides, so this is the second way, a more coordinated way of forwarding postings to multiple groups. So before we even had the website, back in 2011, so last year, we circulated over 100 postings from over 25 employers. And that interest is growing. Just judging by January, our stats are looking really positive. And this is before we even had the website. Now, through the website, you can register as an employer, you can register as a partner at no cost and circulate postings using the different communications mechanisms that we have online. And you can even target specific networks. Now, if you're an employer that's looking to hire in larger numbers, and I know the banks do this on a seasonal basis sometimes, one way of doing it is doing recruitment fairs, and we can talk more about that in detail for those who are interested. Next, now we recognize that employers are not always hiring, and so I wanted to include this slide to highlight that it's still important to build your brand as an employer of choice so that when the job opportunities arise, the talent pool is aware of your organization. So there's a number of ways that you can do this. The first is through information sessions or tours. So the picture that you see there was a tour that was hosted by George Kell Corporation for a number of engineering members of the different PINs. And then maybe Daniel will talk to you a little bit more about this. But it's a simple model, and it was only about 2 hours of the employer's time. They did a tour of the site. They had their president come out and speak, as well as an immigrant success story within their company. And the benefit of that is that you don't have to be hiring as an employer, yet it gives you an opportunity to interact with immigrant talent in your sector. Second is you can also involve your employees, and you can encourage them to participate in an immigrant network as a guest speaker or as a mentor, or maybe even provide training or a workshop at one of the network's events. It's a great way to be able to develop employee leadership skill as well as their cross-cultural competence. Many of the networks that we work with have monthly meetings, and many of them do invite guest speakers on a regular basis. Another way to do it is by attending events. So for example, the Latin American MBA network, they're called LAMBA. They regularly invite employers as guests to their events. So again, it's another opportunity to meet the talent pool. And I know that LAMBA, I think, also asks their members, many of whom are employed in great companies, to invite their managers as special guests along to their events as well. So you may want to ask who among your staff are members of immigrant networks, and that might be a great sort of entry for you to go and attend some of the events. And another way is also by partnering with a network, and this is kind of a deeper way of being able to do this. So I'll give an example just briefly. The Iranian-Canadian Network runs a group mentoring program, and they have a number of employer partners. So their mentoring coordinator connects with their employer partners and offers to send resumes of the mentees in the same industry. So there's been successful hires in this regard. LSI Engineering, which is an engineering firm based in Richmond Hill, has successfully hired engineers through their connections with IC Network. So now the slide that you see on the screen talks about other ways that you can be involved. So we know that many of these PINs are volunteer-run associations, and they can always benefit from additional resources so that they can do what they do better. So the first and the most obvious is financial support. So I know, for example, Scotiabank sponsors a few of the networks that we work with. But another way is also by hosting an event for a network. So for example, a group called CAMP, they're sometimes hosted by Procter & Gamble at their offices in Shepherd and Yonge. Staff can also be involved as volunteers, and I already spoke to you about that a little earlier. So I think the benefit is really about developing long-term relationships, building communications pipelines relevant to your business, and as well raising awareness of your organization as an employer of choice. So my top 3 takeaways for you are, the first is I hope that just with this whirlwind of 10 minutes of lots of information that you recognize that immigrant networks really are an untapped talent pool of recent as well as established immigrants from across different professions and a wide range of ethnocultural groups that could meet your recruitment needs. Second, if you don't have to be hiring to engage the networks, I think it's really worth the time and effort to establish and maintain the relationship so that when the opportunities arise, your talent pipeline is in place. And the third is the PIN's website, I think, is a really good place for you to start, just to learn more about the networks and engage with them. Now, if the networks in your region are not yet represented on our website, I suggest you connect with your Immigrant Employment Council, and there's a list of them on the Allies website, or perhaps ask an immigrant serving agency in your community. And then I know at the end of this presentation, we'll make the links live for everybody, which will include that networksforimmigrants.ca. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Raquel. A lot of really wonderful information and valuable information for the organizations that are interested in getting involved or just learning more about the PINS network. Deanna, as an organization that's involved with the PINS project, can you tell us a little bit about Scotiabank's involvement with the project?
Certainly, and just listening to Raquel just gets me all excited about the project again. So, you know, Raquel already spoke about a number of I think some of the very obvious, or at least obvious benefits to me earlier in terms of source of talent, employer of choice, those kinds of things. But what really attracted me and Scotiabank to this particular project is that as a large organization that has been very focused on diversity for a long time, we get a lot of requests, a lot of asks from different community organizations, and as you heard Raquel say, just the initial scan in the GTA area came up with 70 professional immigrant networks, let alone how many that might be across the country. Because we're a national employer, we're always interested in how does this apply in other regions other than Toronto. So this was a real opportunity to coordinate the requests we were getting from the community and really be clear and coordinated about what we need from the community. And what we need from the community is talent. And these groups have a lot of talent. We, at Scotiabank, one of the things we're really proud of is that we have a really strong culture of inclusion. It's really a part of, or the heart of our global community of Scotiabankers. And I can say from personal experience, the floor I work on, I'm sure, covers every continent on the earth, and the number of languages I can't even begin to account. So it really is who we are and what we aspire to be. And if we aspire in that way, we want to get to those groups and invite them to work with us as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And the other side to that is that, you know, diversity in terms of perspective and training and background is really the breeding ground for creativity and innovation. And although we're a bank, and people might not think innovation goes with bank, we have to look at different perspectives in order to serve the numerous different types of community, both in Canada and around the world. So that really, it just gives us a great coordinated way to do this that has, you know, global scalability in some respects. We also really focus on partnerships in the community, looking at who are strong partners that can really help us do that coordination, and TRIAC and Allies are absolutely one of those partners. We have a strong relationship, and it really amounts to shared value, this project, because not only do we get a great source of talent in an efficient and effective way, we also are seeing the networks grow themselves, which is fabulous to see. So we're not just contributing to our business objectives, we're contributing to society building as well, which is really about shared value. And, you know, the offshoot of all of that is it tells people that we have a culture of inclusion, that we're a place that you would want to work. So it does raise our profile. That goes with, you know, a number of things we do, and really is not the entire focus of this, but it has that effect, and certainly can have that effect for other employers as well. So we've been heavily involved in the development of the project. I myself actually sit on the advisory committee, and it's such a pleasure to attend the meetings when they happen, just to hear how the networks are improving and to see them grow and become more solid and develop capacity. But there's, you know, lots of other ways that we've been involved. So one of those is to sort of be on regular call for finding speakers or presenters for events. And one example is, I think it was on a previous slide, where our director for small business banking actually provided part of the event for the PINS leaders on strategic planning, which is something we do regularly in the bank and, you know, as part of the normal course of business, but may not be something the immigrant networks themselves may be skilled at yet. So he took the opportunity to speak to them, thoroughly enjoyed himself, and, you know, made some connections to the PINS leaders and really helped to pass on some of his knowledge. We've also just frankly hosted events just to make sure that there was a place for the event to happen, even though we didn't have speakers or other things at the event. One of the great things we did, and I'm looking forward to the next iteration of this, is we connected our internal employee resource group, which is called HOLA, so the Hispanic Organization for Leadership and Advancement at Scotiabank, with a couple of, I think it was a couple, Raquel, remind me if I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm. There are about maybe actually about 4 organizations that were involved as well.
Okay, so 4 PINs, including Hispanotech and LAMBA, I can't remember who.
And then the Latin Project Managers Network.
Latin Project, yes. So 3 or 4 immigrant networks had an event with our Scotiabank Employee Resource Group people, and it was such a great way to connect working people from Latin background of some sort with people who are looking for jobs. And one of the things we see regularly is we get great referrals from our employees. So for them to meet the people who have great skills and talent to offer and then go back to their workplace and go to their manager, gee, I just met someone who might be really great for this job, is a really great way to start integrating talent quicker and more efficiently into our workplaces. And, you know, what's certainly been of great benefit for us is we're actually partnering with our multicultural banking unit to fund this initiative. And we know that when immigrants come to a new country, that making sure all the personal details and your settling your family is really important. And one of those is banking needs, making sure that you have access to funds, to credit, and having that done quickly. So that sort of goes part and parcel with the employment side. If we can help them settle their banking arrangements, then they're available for work sooner. Sooner they're available for work, the more they can ensure that their family gets settled quickly. So our multicultural banking unit supports a number of the professional immigrant networks in terms of their events and other things that they do on their own as well. So it's a really great collaboration amongst a number of groups in Scotiabank and outside Scotiabank to maximize this particular project. Part of what is also, as I mentioned earlier, really attractive about this is the scalability. So Toronto has a plethora of professional immigrant networks, as Raquel mentioned, but we know there's others out there, and we're so looking forward to the website really being the vehicle to bring those other groups in so that you know, we have access to talent across the country. That's just, it's such a great vehicle in so many ways, and really, really makes sense for a national employer as we are. So going national is a great future for us. So where does that leave you? I think what's really important to realize is that there's this whole big myth about Canadian experience, that working in a Canadian workplace requires that you've had experience doing that, which is a whole chicken and egg thing in and of itself. And what I think a lot of people miss is that especially professional immigrants bring a whole wealth of experience with them that in many ways is equal to, in many cases, superior to the kind of experience they might have gotten here in usually the short amount of time they've been here. And that it really pays to look beyond that Canadian experience and use your immigrant or professional immigrant networks to help you understand the value of that experience, because they know what they came from. They know, you know, what kind of reputation the educational institutions have. They know what companies work in their country. There's more to it than Canadian experience. Obviously, the networks are a fabulous way to identify great people. And as I said, you can do that in a number of different ways, through job postings, contacting networks directly, introducing them to your employee groups. And the last thing that I think is really important, and this goes back to the being able to settle your family in a new country, that, you know, a lot of immigrants need a bit of flexibility to make sure that they can get all of that settled. A lot of the things they need to do will happen or open during work hours, and that's just a reality. But a little bit of flexibility, especially up front, to allow someone to do those things they need to, garners a lot of loyalty and engagement from a new employee. That applies for any new employee, but particularly when someone is very concerned about making sure their family is well settled and able to function in a brand new environment. So those, I think, are really important things to think about as an employer when you're looking at this group as potential talent.
Thanks very much, Deanna. Some really useful tips for the organizations that are on the line with us, for all organizations. For the participants that we have, just a quick note, the links to all of the websites that we're talking about today will be available at the end of this webinar. Okay? And we do have Daniel on the line, Daniel Chiariano. Welcome, Daniel. We did have a bit of technical difficulty at the beginning. However, we do have you now, so again, welcome.
Thank you, Susan. I hope that the connection is better now.
Yes, absolutely. I can hear you just fine. I'm sure everyone else can as well.
Excellent.
And Daniel is with the Association of Romanian Engineers in Canada, or ARIC. And I'm wondering, Daniel, if you could please let us know how it is that you work with employers.
Yes, definitely, and thanks again. Hello, everyone. Let's imagine that you have access to a pool of thousands of highly skilled international trained engineers from a wide array of expertise, qualified to match your business needs, such as recruitment or tapping into diverse markets. This is AREC, and I'm one of the founders and the current president. Thank you. So the Association of Romanian Engineers in Canada is a non-for-profit professional organization of voluntary service. And in a few words, I would like to tell you how this association started and the role it represents in the Romanian community here in Canada. In 2003, a small number of engineers began meeting on a monthly basis in order to create a network where engineers educated in Romania could be brought together. The purpose was to help each other succeed in our careers by understanding cultural differences, building a better name for ourselves and our community in Canada, where we were welcomed with open arms. After 8 years, we demonstrated to have staying power, and our vision still has 3 key components. First, to promote the common interest of the engineers educated in Romania and living now in Canada. Second, effective networking. And third, helping engineers educated in Romania with advice towards Professional Engineer of Ontario license and employment. Susan, if we can go to the next slide, please. So our focus is to expand your pool of potential candidates, and we are doing this through different venues. We have a section on our website for job postings, careers links, and advertising for recruitment companies. We are working already with a few recruitment companies that are sending us job postings, and we post to our members. As well, we have a group, a REC group on LinkedIn, and we are also on Facebook and have a Twitter account. We organize information sessions and company tours, and Raquel mentioned the visit at Sandvik. Actually, that one was very interesting, and through that visit, our participants had the opportunity to hear and see about the newest cutting tools technologies. As well, we have a tour at the George Kell Corporation, where was a great opportunity to hear directly from an employer what they are looking for in candidates and to learn how to target the job search in a more efficient way. Other activities, we have guests to our different events, VIPs, meetings, and at our AREC Gala dinner. The purpose of all this is to strengthen ties to increase connections between decision makers and potential employees. Raquel mentioned several benefits and outcomes already. I will mention some others. One will be that through all these activities, we are attracting potential. We are offering to attract potential talent and helping internationally trained engineers to find jobs in line with their education and experience. The participants are learning firsthand from the company presidents about job search tools and strategies, the hiring process, as well as sharing experiences with other peers. For example, during the Kell site tour, Peter Kell, the president of George Kell Corporation, emphasize 3 career tips for international trained engineers. Know what job elements are important to you, such as safety, social environment, and corporate culture. Second, obtain your professional engineer designation. And take courses to fill the gaps you might have in your professional experience. On the other side, because of this good relationship that we have with Peter and George Kell Corporation, AREC holds all our meetings at Kell and has done so for the last 5 years. To finish off, I would like to suggest some tips for employers about how they can get the most out of working with Professional Immigrant Networks. In my opinion and my colleagues' opinion, the relationship is very important. So please build a relationship with the executive team. By the way, you can contact me directly at president@arec.ca or go on our website. The link will be available later, and you can connect with us, and we will be very happy. Also, please guide that association on how to build a partnership. Many of our colleagues in the PINS group, they are new association, and they will be glad to have someone to guide them through all these steps, because it's not easy. And please initiate and participate in seminars and workshops. You know your needs, and helping us to incorporate your needs in our activity will be a great help. As well, I will mention the mentoring session, and note at last, share the success stories. Of course, we are not recruitment companies, but if there is a success stories, let's make it public and enjoy all of us.
Thank you, Daniel. I think that we've all learned a lot from your experiences, and you have some really great advice for employers, so thank you.
Thank you.
The chat box is now in the center of your screen. Simply type your questions into the entry field at the bottom of the box. I also want to draw your attention to the box at the bottom of your screen with additional information and websites, including the PINS website, the RSWS, and AREC websites as well. So please feel free to enter your questions. So we have a question for the panel. What can we do to engage professional immigrant networks that are embedded within workplaces? For example, some employers have affinity groups as a part of their diversity strategy. Would the PINS site benefit them in a particular way? I'll start with Raquel.
So affinity groups, as Diana had already mentioned, they are a key partner in the PINS initiative. By the definition that we use of professional immigrant networks, affinity groups actually don't fall within that category, but we certainly want to engage them as partners. And that's just as important within this network of networks that we're building. So I think affinity groups can register in the same way that employers can register as a partner on the website. And I think when they get to the community, which is the sort of the login section of the website, they may be able to find some of the resources would be of benefit to them. But in addition to that, it enables them to be able to connect with the networks directly. So given the example of the Latin American groups, if, for example, we didn't exist and the website was there, Ola Scotiabank could have just gone on there and did a search to see which are the Latin American networks that are operating in the GTA, for example, and then they can message them directly. So I think the website can certainly serve as a good tool for them to be able to make connections.
Fantastic. So being able to leverage contacts, resources, events for these affinity groups through PINS, and as you mentioned, building that network of networks. Fantastic. Okay. We have a question here. Are there any developments, particularly for Quebec or Quebec region? Raquel, I'll start with you, and if anyone else has anything else to add.
So for now, as I mentioned, we're really much focused on the GTA and some groups that are Ontario-based, although some of the networks that we work with actually have a national mandate, although some of the ones with a national mandate may have, for example, a majority of their members here with a few members in other communities across Canada. So as yet, we don't have any groups that are from Quebec or Quebec-based, but as we mentioned earlier as well, with the website now being online, I think there's the capacity certainly to onboard other communities, including Quebec.
Wonderful. It's an opportunity to grow and expand as we were discussing earlier. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We have a question here specifically for Deanna. Deanna, what advice would you give other employers to tap into immigrant talent?
So aside from what I already mentioned in terms of really looking carefully at experience beyond Canadian experience, the best thing you can do is get involved on the PINS website. This is really the most coordinated way to tap into a huge pool of immigrant talent. It's a real challenge to manage a whole bunch of different relationships, and through the website you can manage many, many different relationships, and in fact probably coordinate a few of them like we've done with the Latin American PINS. So this is a huge start, and as you use the website and start to see what kind of associations are out there and what might fulfill the needs that you have in your particular organization, you'll probably narrow it down to a few immigrant networks that make the most sense. But I think it would be a shame not to use this the way it's intended, especially for smaller employers, because there's only so much time you have in the day, and I don't have a great lot of time in a large organization. I'm sure you have even less. So this is just an excellent, efficient, and quality way to tap into the great talent that's out there.
Wonderful. Thank you, Deanna.
Suzanne,
and does anyone else have anything to add to that? Yes, go ahead.
Suzanne, may I add the question, please, for Stephanie?
Oh, okay.
Stephanie, maybe you have already in place a program specifically designed, to assist employees who are recent immigrants to Canada, or you are offering onboarding programs such as internal coaching or mentoring to help new employees who are recent immigrants understand the Canadian workforce. In both cases, you can invite AREC or other PINs, to participate to such events. We will, we will be there. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. We have some questions here around kind of regional relevance and regional participation as far as PINS or as the PINS network is concerned. So a specific question around, you've addressed various regions in Ontario and mentioned that you were looking at other provinces. Is Saskatoon an area that you would be looking to expand into? So I'm going to open that up to the panel and whomever would like to, I would open that up to Raquel.
Maybe I'll start.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, yes, I think I actually mentioned the communities that are already involved. So as I mentioned earlier, TRIAC is really GTA-based. So we are leveraging our partnership with allies to be able to connect with the other communities. So the platform is there, it's available, it's just a question of building those relationships to connect with the right organizations in the different communities to be able to find the scans and find the networks and so on. It is quite an involved process. So the platform is there, but we need to develop those relationships first to be able to open up these opportunities.
Wonderful. Thank you, Raquel. We have a question here from Denise. What do you feel is the biggest barrier that holds companies back from taking advantage of this great talent pool? What might reduce the impact of that barrier? I'm going to direct that question to Deanna, just to start. If you'd like to field that one, Deanna, or you can
Sorry, I got distracted by someone coming in the room. Could you just repeat that?
Not a problem. What do you feel is the biggest barrier that holds companies back from taking advantage of this great talent pool? What might reduce the impact of that barrier?
Yeah. I'll go back to something I said earlier. I find there's still this real bias to wanting to hire someone who has Canadian experience. And that it really limits who or what you might do in terms of identifying talent. So it comes down to helping your hiring managers or your HR recruiters or whoever might be directly involved in the hiring process to to understand that there is something beyond that, and then giving them tools to be able to figure out what that experience is worth. So, to be really blunt about it. And that's where the immigrant networks are really helpful, to be able to contact the leader or other, board member of the PINs and say, I have someone here who on the resume says they went to this particular school for marketing in Romania. What do you know anything about that school? Give me some idea about what the program is like. Is there someone else I can talk to? Just helping them understand that there are ways to assign some value to that, and that it's not as scary as it looks, or it's not as ambiguous or amorphous as it might otherwise look. So it takes a little bit extra time. I totally understand that, but the benefit and the value of doing that is you get it back tenfold in many, many cases. So I think that whole quote-unquote Canadian experience thing is a real big red herring, and the more we can show that that's not critical, the better off we'll be in the grand scheme, both from immigrants looking for jobs and employers looking for talent.
Okay, so, and also just being aware of your resources, I guess, is also what you're saying, being aware of what's around you. And it's interesting because working in this field, I find it hard-pressed in other countries to find other countries asking, well, do you have American experience or Iranian experience, et cetera, et cetera. We seem to be unique in Canada in that we ask specifically for Canadian experience. That's an excellent point.
Suzanne? Sorry, it's Raquel. Just wanted to add to that as well. What I recognize when we work with employers and we actually bring them in contact with the immigrant talent pool, in this case, it's getting to know the leaders and some of the members, I think perceptions really start to change when there's that personal contact and that interaction. So that's why I think I emphasized in one of the earlier slides, it's important to just get to know the talent pool. I think when you start to converse with these folks and understand the rich experience and skills and expertise that they bring, it's incredibly humbling. I think that's been the biggest lesson for me, meeting all these leaders. They're amazing. They speak multiple languages, multiple degrees, lots of experience, global experience. It's quite amazing.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Raquel. We have a question here from Bonnie for the panel. How can PINs help small and medium-sized organizations recruit and integrate immigrants? So anyone who would like to take a stab at that, I guess I can start with Daniel.
Thanks. Shannon, in this regard, again, it's about a relationship, and we can offer our resources in terms of our members' abilities, and skills, and we can organize together a meeting, a seminar, a workshop where you can present your company, and from here we can start, or you can send us job postings. We can send them through our network. Everything that, as I said before, you know your needs, just guide us, tell us what your needs are, and we will come to the table and find a solution.
Wonderful.
And if I might add, Suzanne, so I think one is, Daniel already touched upon the job postings, and we know that the website is one way of being able to do that. But I think also, once you've hired that staff person, I think sometimes just making them aware that these networks do exist is a great way to be able to lend them additional support, additional networks, and people who have gone through the process themselves. So I think that really helps kind of in the onboarding and the integration piece.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I'll just add one last thing, it's Deanna. What Professional Immigrant Networks end up being are additional recruiters for you. So if you don't have a lot of time to recruit, they do a lot of the work for you. You just tell them what you need, and it goes like wildfire through the networks looking for someone that can fit that particular need. So they're kind of like an additional body when you don't have a real body in your organization. So I think this is, it's not just great for large organizations like Scotiabank. I think it's doubly great for smaller ones that just don't have that kind of resource.
Absolutely, maximizing the human resources and absolutely within your recruitment capacity. Wonderful. I do have a question that I suppose speaks to the PINS program in a long-term strategy, so perhaps not where it is right now, but perhaps where it could possibly go. And I'll direct it to Raquel. The question is, are there plans to develop a PIN-type program for Aboriginal professional networks?
Well, I think it's a question of mandate and mission. TRIAC, just virtue of our name and our mandate, we really are focused on skilled immigrants. But having said that, I think we're more than happy to share the model that we've developed, that we are continuing to develop with other networks. And I think there's certainly possibilities in the future, if there is an Aboriginal professional network that's formed, that there may be ways to connect that network to our network. I think that's the value of having coordinated networks that exist for a specific purpose and then building bridges between those.
Right. So just to build on Raquel's comment, I've had some discussions with the Aboriginal Human Resources Council on this particular topic, just because I can see the model works, and she's right, from a mission mandate perspective, it doesn't align that way. A good example of a professional network out there is the Aboriginal Financial Officers Association, and I know there are other ones. So I don't know how far along we're going to get with that with the Aboriginal Human Resources Council, but it's certainly been floated as a potential area of focus. But again, it comes down to resources and time and ability to develop it.
Absolutely. And if anyone is interested, just because it kind of diverges a little from the focus of this webinar, but the Racism-Free Workplace Strategy, the kind of the second part of our mandate, does focus on the employment and removal of barriers in employment for Aboriginal people. So we are connected with those networks within the Aboriginal communities as well. So please, you can feel free to contact me as a resource as well on that front. Okay. Are there any other questions that we have on the line from our participants? All right. Okay. Well, if there are no other questions, I'm just looking at the time here. And before we go, I just definitely would like to thank Raquel, Deanna, and Daniel for sharing your experience and stories with us. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. All those who registered will receive an email when the webinar is available to view online at hireimmigrants.ca. You can also visit the site to great tools and resources for employers, including monthly e-tips, which you can easily sign up for, as well as previous webinars. The recording of today's webinar will be available online in about 10 days' time. The next Hire Immigrants webinar will be in March and will highlight some of the promising practices winners of this year's Best Employers for New Canadians Awards have implemented. I'd like to ask you to please complete the short evaluation survey that's just popped up onto your browser. The web address is also in the box at the bottom of your screen. Thank you all for logging in, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.